Right now, as I'm recording this, the United States is at war with Iran, and I want to make sure you understand what that actually means. Not the spin, not the backfilling you're already hearing from the administration, but what it means structurally, historically, and constitutionally. Because here is what we know. The president launched military strikes on Iran without a plan, without an endgame, and without telling Congress. And then, when it didn't go the way he expected, he started making up reasons after the fact for why we're there. That is a problem. A really, really big one. So today I want to walk you through what happened, why it matters far beyond the Middle East, and, because I know that's the question sitting in all of your minds right now, what we can actually do about it. Stay with me. Now, I know a lot of you are exhausted. I can feel it. And I want to say that exhaustion is completely rational, because what this administration does deliberately is move so fast and in so many directions at once that you can never quite find solid ground under your feet. That's not an accident. That's the strategy. So let me give you the ground. Here is what we know. The United States struck Iran. The war went on, and in the process, and this is the part that I think has not gotten nearly enough attention, it appears that a strike hit a girls' school. More than 160 people are dead. Most of them children. Now, I want to be careful here, because the administration has not confirmed this, and I'm going to tell you only what we know. But every independent account, every expert outside the administration, says this happened, and in international law, deliberately striking a civilian facility is a war crime. The question of whether this was deliberate or a catastrophic mistake, that matters legally. But the deaths are not in dispute. And there was no plan, no endgame, no authorization from Congress. That's where we are. Let me open a parenthesis here, because to understand why this is so dangerous, we need to go back a little. Bear with me, this is important. After World War II, the countries that had survived that war, including the United States, sat down and made a decision. Never again. Not like this. 2 world wars in 30 years had killed tens of millions of people, and so they built something. A system. A web of alliances, trade agreements, international institutions, shared rules, the United Nations, NATO, the World Health Organization, freedom of the seas. The idea that countries could not simply invade each other because they wanted something the other country had. It wasn't perfect. I want to be clear about that. But it worked. We have not had a world war since 1945. That is not a coincidence. Now, and here is where I want you to really pay attention, Trump has been systematically dismantling every single pillar of that system since he took office. The tariffs attacked the trade pillar. The threats against Europe attacked the alliance pillar. And now, striking Iran without congressional authorization, without a plan, without an endgame, that attacks the most fundamental pillar of all. The idea that a democracy goes to war only when its elected representatives say so. The framers of the Constitution were not naive. They had watched European kings drag their countries into wars on a whim, wars that bled ordinary people dry in taxes and lives. So they gave the power to declare war to Congress, not to one man. That guardrail was just ignored, completely. And that's not a rabbit hole, that's the whole story. So let's look at what we actually have in front of us. Because when you lay it all out, the pattern is impossible to ignore. First, the strike on Iran was not part of a strategy. The administration thought it was going to be fast. In and out, one, and done. Anybody who knows anything about Iran knew that was never going to happen. Because Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. Look it up on a map. 20% of the world's oil moves through that strait. You do not kick that hornet's nest and walk away clean. And now we have senators coming out of classified briefings, furious, saying they have no idea why we're there. Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut said it plainly. No explanation, no endgame, nothing. But then there's more. There is always more. The Congressional Budget Office just released numbers showing the United States has borrowed $50 billion a week for the past 5 months. $50 billion a week. And now the administration wants more money for a war nobody wanted, nobody approved, and nobody can explain. At the same time, they are cutting the Affordable Care Act, cutting the National Weather Service, cutting the things that ordinary Americans depend on every single day. And then there's the SAVE Act. Trump is pushing hard for a voting law that would require every American to produce either a passport or a birth certificate with a matching name, just to register to vote. A passport costs $130 and takes weeks to get. A birth certificate is not something most people have on hand. I had to order mine online and apply to 2 different counties just to get it. This is not about election security. This is about deciding who gets to vote. And who gets hit hardest by that? Women, transgender Americans, the elderly, students. Exactly the people least likely to vote Republican. So we have an illegal war, a borrowed economy, And now an attempt to lock in power by locking people out of the ballot box. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. Now, I want to stop here for a second, because I know what this feels like from the outside. It feels like walls closing in. And I understand that. I really do. But here is what I want you to see, because I think it's getting lost in all the noise. He is not winning. Not really. A man who is winning does not need to suppress the vote. A man who is winning does not need to borrow $50 billion a week and then cut health care to pay for a war nobody supports. A man who is winning does not stand in front of his own party and wait for them to stop clapping, because everyone in that room is too afraid to be the first one to stop. That is not strength. That is a cornered man. And history, and I have spent my entire career studying this, history is very clear about what happens when a leader starts making decisions out of desperation rather than strategy. They get more erratic, they overreach, and the people around them start doing the math. You are already seeing Republicans go quiet. You are already seeing members switch parties. You are already seeing the cracks. We are not at the end of this, but we may, and I want to be careful here, we may be at the beginning of the end of it. So what do we do with all of this? First, call your representatives. I mean it. Every senator who sat in that classified briefing and came out furious needs to hear from you. They need to know that the American people are watching, that we know there is no endgame, and that we will not accept a war that was never authorized, never explained, and never asked for. Their phone numbers are on their websites. It takes 3 minutes. Second, pay attention to the SAVE Act. This one is quiet right now, and it should not be. If you care about who gets to vote in 2026, this is the fight. Talk about it. Share it. Make sure the people around you understand what is actually in that bill, because the ads running right now are lying about it. And third, and this one is mine, so take it for what it's worth. Stop just reacting. I know how hard that is. But we are the majority here, and majorities that know what they want and say it out loud, clearly, specifically, repeatedly, are majorities that eventually win. We have done this before, in the 1850s, the 1890s, the 1930s. Every single time, it looked like the walls were closing in. Every single time, ordinary people decided enough. This is our enough moment, and we are in it together.